We all carry some kind of story in our mind that we're not good enough, or that there's something fundamentally wrong with us that, prevents us from succeeding, maybe in the markets or anywhere else, that makes us, I don't know, unlovable or whatever. And I wouldn't even know how to talk about the psychology of trading without addressing this, which is essentially a question of our identity. And I mean, we did it in the previous lectures. We talked about thoughts and emotions. We talked about the self and the illusion thereof. We talked about how everything we experience is really just a matter of perception, which is either hard coded by evolutionary processes, passed down to us genetically, or learned through experience. And we saw how the practice that we learned can help us free ourselves from the habit of mindless perception so that we can begin to approach the markets, even more so our lives, with more stability, wise discernment, equanimity. But I think this prior discussion still needs a little bit more substance, so I'll address that here. For a long time, I felt locked in a cycle of negative thoughts and feelings, which exacerbated my losses in the markets one way or the other. Then came a point where I got so overwhelmed by all the chaos in my life and also in my trading account, there's no other way to put it, that I began to really resent my own existence. Why am I alive on this earth if I can't even be good at something? If every time I do something I fail miserably at it? If I can't get out of my own way? If I can't even get the love and the attention of the people who are supposed to love me or support me, care for me, right? And the list goes on. I found problems everywhere instead of opportunities. I mean, what else was I supposed to be thinking and feeling? In my case, this is how I was trained to be. We don't often think about it and may even never discuss it with others at all. But pretty much everyone has a voice in their head, a semi-constant inner narrator, a verbal stream of thought, always judging, commenting, always trying to make sense of everything at all times. Sometimes the voice is encouraging, reassuring, softly telling you not to feel demolished by a loss, let's say, calling you to let a winner run its full course, urging you to calm down whenever you get captured by anger or frustration or anxiety. But other times, the inner voice will do the exact opposite of that. Sometimes it is contemptuous, afflictive, trepid, demeaning. What other words can I use here? Defeatist, punitive, humiliating. I mean, the list goes on. It doesn't represent anything like our best insights or our most mature capacities. It is not the voice of our better nature, that's for sure. But where do inner voices come from? What makes the quality of your inner voice? Why do some people report to have softer, more gentle, more compassionate and loving inner voices than others? Those are great questions, right? You see, an inner voice always used to be an outer voice. When we are born, our brain are pretty much like sponges, and we start absorbing everything that comes to our senses. For instance, if we are born in an environment that is hostile, this conditions our mind. If we are born in an environment that is loving, peaceful, this also conditions the mind. Everything that is in our environment that we perceive in any way shapes the microstructures of our brain. Loud, aggressive noises, the soft voice of a loving mother, everything is having an effect on us and shapes how we live and experience our lives later. This is very serious matter, my friends. This is why, as parents, we have a duty to select what comes to our child's senses. In this same way, as we grow up, we absorb the tones of others, maybe harassed or angry parents, threat of an elder sibling keen to put us down, the words of a schoolyard bully, or teacher who seems impossible to please. Just like we internalize helpful voices, we internalize the unhelpful ones too, and more easily, one might argue, because in certain key moments in the past, they sounded compelling, The authority figures repeated their messages over and over again until they got lodged in our own way of thinking. And I'm guessing that process might even start earlier at a certain stage in the womb before birth. I mean, this is just an assumption. I haven't looked into it, so I won't assert things here based on, uh, you know, insufficient evidence. But I wouldn't be surprised if it were the case because the baby is inside the mother, and so her voice resonates throughout its entire body. The mother's various psychological states are getting to him or her. If the baby's brain is at a certain stage of development where consciousness is already present, you can see how this is having a major impact even before birth. Now, where does that leave us? The reality is this: many of us grew up around nervous people, around people who lost their temper rather easily, people who humiliated us, who did, I don't know, their best to put us down. I know this was the case for me. As I continued to evolve in such an environment with such people, their voices became my own. How I talked to myself and my capacity to thrive as a human being went down dramatically. Now, part of achieving happiness and maturity as an individual, as a human being, involves altering our inner voices, which means that we're making sure that we're encountering equally convincing and confident, but also helpful and constructive and reassuring and loving varieties of voices over long periods, and taking care to internalize them, making them part of who we are. This might be the voices of supportive friends, wife, husband, an author maybe. And I hope, my friends, in this course I have been one of these voices for you. We need to hear these voices often enough and around tricky enough issues that they can come to feel normal and, natural responses, so that eventually they come to be the types of things we say to ourselves. They become our own thoughts. By the way, on a side note, this is also one of the reasons why self-affirmations work. If you don't know what self-affirmations are, check out the free short ebook that I make available on my website. I've included it as a downloadable file right after this lecture. So, coming back to the main point, the best source of inner voices speaks to us in a gentle, kind, and unhurried way. It should feel as if a kind arm was being put around our shoulder by someone who isn't moved or panicked, no matter the current circumstance or situation. So, how do we make such a voice king of the fortress, so to speak? How do we make it the most dominant voice in our mind? How do we change our inner voice so that it supports us in everything that we do, no matter the failures and the vicissitudes we go through? Always loving, always compassionate, encouraging, reassuring. Well, first of all, as we saw, the meditation technique that you've learned here helps with that. It helps you cultivate stability of mind, equanimity, and a capacity to implement wise discernment in our lives, which is choosing wholesome states over unwholesome ones, wholesome thoughts over unwholesome ones, wholesome behaviors over unwholesome ones. These are the benefits of the practice in a nutshell. If you want to take it further, which I recommend, use some self-affirmations before or after your meditation practice. Again, check out the short ebook right after this lecture. The practice of self-affirmation is not a big deal. It's just a couple of seconds added on top of your meditation practice, with potentially outstanding results. Thirdly, surround yourself with people who love you, who encourage you, and want you to succeed in life. People who lift you up instead of putting you down. The people who put you down, my friends, have no faith in themselves, first and foremost. And so, without necessarily wanting to do you harm, they cannot have faith in your own abilities either. And it's not their fault. They are themselves the product of a gigantic cause and effect process, which is out of their control, right? I mean, they are this way for a reason. But if their behavior, the way they speak to you, isn't making you thrive as a human being, you have to do something about it. Either discuss it with them, find a way to work things out, and more drastically sever the links with them if it is necessary. I don't know if you've heard this quote from Jim Rohn. We are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And this is true. I mean, you become a lot like the people you surround yourself with. That's why it's so important to surround yourself with positive people, but at the same time, people who challenge you intellectually, who prompt you to become a better version of yourself. It's one of the most important lessons you can learn as a human being. If you evolve among people who have no hope, no vision, just a lot of despair, it's going to lead you to a terrible state of mind. And I don't know how one can succeed in such conditions, let alone thrive as a trader. So in conclusion, our minds contain the voices of all the people we have ever known, and their voice still resonates within us. We should learn to mute the unhelpful ones and focus on the ones that we really need to guide us through the thickets of life. If you can do that reliably, your trading results should, over time, fall into place.